Hello again. Health Secretary Wes Streeting has triggered a debate about whether or not Britain should apply to join the European Union. He did this by saying in a television interview that the country has, as he puts it, moved on since Brexit and that we have to accept lower growth and reduced investment as a consequence of leaving the EU. This has caused Brexit to begin trending on Twitter once more over 8 years since the country voted to leave Europe, and most of those tweeting about it are saying what a grand idea it would be for Britain to apply to join the European Union. I will say at once that I voted to join the common market as it then was in 1975, and that at the time it seemed a good move. The situation today, though, is very different, and I'm not sure I would vote in the same way if another referendum were to be held next year. A lot has happened over the last half-century. In 1975, the idea of a European Union was relatively new and pretty exciting. The Second World War had only been over for 30 years and was still a very real thing always at the back of our minds. It will be remembered that the Fawlty Towers episode about the Germans, with the line "Don't mention the war," was first screened that year. This was hysterically funny, but also significant because when somebody mentioned the war, there was obviously only one war that we knew about, the Second World War. That was the war. Before the war, after the war. Having grown up in the post-war world, it really seemed to me a wonderful idea that this country and France and Germany would all belong to a union and we would forget the war forever. It didn't, of course, work out that way, and the cracks which have been showing for some while are getting wider and wider in Europe. Donald Tusk, who was president of the European Council during Brexit, was the most gung-ho advocate of the complete union that one could hope to meet. His vision was that Europe would be one country without frontiers and everyone living happily in a federal state. Now that he's Prime Minister of Poland, of course, he's announced that he's closing his country's borders, chucking out illegal immigrants and rejecting any claims for asylum, even if that does mean uh, abandoning the European Convention on Human Rights. A few years ago, borders in Europe had virtually been abolished and border posts were left unmanned. That's all changed, and the borders are once again being guarded and patrolled. Nationalism is on the rise in Europe, in Holland, France, Italy, Hungary, Germany, Austria, just to mention a few countries. It is a matter of time before one of these nations holds a referendum and decides to leave the European Union. All the signs are that the Union is in trouble and about to begin a slow motion collapse which will probably take decades. It is at this moment when the European Union represents the old order, an old-fashioned way of doing things, that we are told that it's time for Britain to think about applying to join. As I say, I was certainly keen enough in 1975 when the vision of a unified Europe was fresh and new and it looked like the future. These days it looks more like the past, like a worn out and useless system which is on its last legs. If there were to be a referendum now, I for one would have to think very carefully before voting to join the European Union. It really isn't anywhere near as attractive now as it was 50 years ago.